A 17-year-old girl of the University Christian School, Jacksonville, gets into a truck with two boys from her school. She's known them for a while. There's no reason to think twice about it, since she is people she considered safe and trusted company. But by that evening, she's dead, left in a wooded ditch 3 miles from campus. And the people who did it aren't strangers who were pouring out rage or self-defense. They're classmates who, according to what one of them later admitted, wanted to know what killing someone would actually feel like. This is the case of Makia Coney. When I wanted to produce a new story, I was drawn to this case because, looking at the perpetrators of this crime, they were supposed to be Christian students. Understanding the morals expected of faithful Christians, I kept asking myself, what would drive them to commit such a heinous act? Is it a systemic or foundational issue? At what point did they arrive at the junction where they saw it as okay to take someone's life? Worse still, their target, Makia, was someone who had never had any issues with them. She had never wronged them in any way, nor was she someone who went looking for trouble. And that is what makes this story even more saddening. But I'll tell it nonetheless, so that her name will not be forgotten, and perhaps someone out there will learn from what happened. Makia was born on February 3, 1993, in Jacksonville, Florida. She grew up there with her parents, Willie and Janice, and a younger sister. People who knew her commonly described her as warm and kind, the kind of person who made other people feel comfortable around her. She was everyone's girl, and that was what endeared her to so many people. At University Christian School, she wasn't just getting good grades, though she was doing that too. She was a junior, well-liked by teachers and students alike. The school's superintendent later called her a one-girl welcome wagon, his way of saying that when new students showed up nervous and out of place, Makia was usually the one who noticed them quickly and did something about them. She had plans for after high school, plans that spoke of someone who already knew what she wanted out of life and was ready to work for it. College, travel, a career that would allow her to make a difference somewhere. None of that happened, obviously. But it's worth saying because, after looking through every available account, nothing in her life pointed toward danger. No conflicts, no enemies, nothing that would explain what came next. Wednesday, February 10th, 2010. Makia's mother had a routine: drop her and her younger sister off at school in the morning, pick them up in the afternoon. That day was supposed to like every other day, but sadly, this Wednesday would be different forever. Around 3:15 p.m., which was already past the school's standard dismissal time, several classmates said they saw Makia leaving the building with another student, Connor Pridgeon. The school surveillance cameras captured the same moment, the two of them walking together through a hallway before eventually exiting the building. As far as anyone has confirmed and would confirm, that's the last time Makia was seen alive. She was supposed to be at an after-school program with her sister that afternoon. She never got there. Somewhere around 5 p.m., when their mother arrived to pick them up, Makia was missing, and her sister had no idea where she'd gone. She looked through the school, checked outside, checked everywhere she could think of. Makia was nowhere to be found. For a girl who knew her mother would be at the center to pick her up, and who always made sure her family knew where she was if she was going to be gone for too long, this was unusual. It was a sign that something was off. Her mother called her phone repeatedly. No answer. Some classmates mentioned they'd heard she might have gone out for food, but that didn't square with her not picking up. Eventually, her parents called the police. According to her, despite the crucial moment and how urgent she sounded, the police did not initially give the complaint the attention it deserved. Jacksonville City Councilman Johnny Gaffney, a friend of the family, later told a local news station that 2 to 3 hours passed with no officer showing up at the Coney home. According to Gaffney, Makia's mother reached out to him directly, and he's the one who ended up contacting police himself. Only after that call did the department reach out to the family. Police would later say they'd responded as fast as they could, citing how many missing person reports they fielded. Whatever the reasoning, those hours mattered, and they were already gone. But again, that didn't change the fact that it took a call from the councilman to get the local police to take action. Around 6 p.m. that evening, a man riding his bike through a wooded area off P Avenue, about 3 miles from the school, noticed something in a drainage ditch. He called 911 immediately. Police, on responding, found the body of a young black female. It took a bit longer to confirm exactly who she was. On hearing the news about the location and description, it was enough to make Mckia's family fear the worst before the identity was officially released. That evening, police confirmed it. The body was 17-year-old Makia Coney. According to reports on the case, she'd been shot twice at close range. There was no sign that she'd fought back. And she'd been left somewhere quiet and out of the way, not a spot someone stumbles onto by chance, which suggested from the start that this hadn't been random. The scene itself didn't offer investigators a lot. Beyond the body, they found tire tracks nearby and a partially smoked cigar with its wrapper. That was close to the extent of it. So they started with people instead of evidence, talking to Mckia's family, her teachers, and her classmates. And the answers kept coming back the same. She was well liked, she wasn't involved in anything risky, nor was she in any toxic relationship. Even her phone didn't provide any clues pointing to possible problems with anyone. That consistency mattered. If nothing in Mckia's life explained this, then whoever was responsible had either planned it carefully, or the reason had nothing to do with her as a person at all. The 3:15 p.m. sighting where she was and Connor was seen leaving the building kept pulling investigators back to Connor Pridgeon, and once they started asking his classmates about him, the picture got more complicated. Some students said Pridgeon was known to use cocaine and marijuana. Others brought up his friend, Charles Southern, specifically that Southern had allegedly said before any of this happened that he wanted to know what it felt like to take someone's life, and that he would eventually like to try it. One student described asking Southern after Mckia's death whether he knew what could possibly have happened to her or whether there was anyone he could point to as a possible suspect. His answer, as that student recalled it, "You'll find out soon." Whatever that meant, it was obviously a red flag. That kind of comment doesn't get ignored. When detectives brought Southern in, he admitted knowing Mckia. Court documents indicate he told them he'd had an on-again, off-again relationship with her, going back roughly a year. But what caught the detectives' attention wasn't just what he said, it was how uneasy he seemed. He was nervous and couldn't sit still. When you put on that kind of display in front of a detective, it's only a matter of time before they get you to confess or give yourself away. Surveillance footage from inside the school backed up what witnesses had already said. Mckia and Pridgeon together, leaving the building. From there, investigators found out something new. After school, the two of them had been picked up by Charles Southern in his own pickup truck. That detail became an important piece of information, something any investigator would pray to uncover. The tire tracks found near where Mckia's body was discovered were compared against Southern's truck and it matched. For the first time, there was physical evidence tying a specific vehicle to the scene, and that truck belonged to one of the last two people seen with Mckia. Southern's mother calls the police. Before detectives could get to Pridgeon, they received an unexpected call from Charles Southern's mother. She said her son had opened up to her. She told them her son hadn't told them everything. According to her, Southern had said Pridgeon was the one who actually killed Mckia. When Pridgeon was confronted with that, he denied it outright. His account was different. He said he'd only witnessed the shooting, that Southern was the one who pulled the trigger, and he'd just been standing there. So now investigators had two suspects, each naming the other as the shooter. And obviously, their wall of defense was already starting to crack. They tried something unusual to break the standoff, putting both boys in the same room and letting them hear exactly what the other had said. It didn't take long after that for both of them to admit some level of involvement. Initially, their story matched. It had been an accident. Southern said he'd pulled the gun out just to scare Mckia, and it went off without him meaning it to. Pridgen backed up that version but added something on his own. He said that afterwards, instead of getting help, he shot her a second time to end what she was going through. Investigators didn't stop there. They searched the homes of both suspects and uncovered two .44 caliber revolvers. Both matched the bullet fragments recovered from Makia's body. The guns, as it turned out, had been stolen from another classmate's house, taken from a box where that student's family kept them. By March 2010, Southern and Pridgen were formally charged with second-degree murder. Both pleaded not guilty at their first hearings and were held in juvenile detention while the case moved forward. Then, months later, Southern told detectives something that completely changed the direction of the investigation. According to Southern's later confession, the accident story wasn't true. He and Pridgen, he said, had been talking about becoming armed robbers, but before taking that path, they wanted to know what it actually felt like to take someone's life, believing that doing so would prepare them for what they might face ahead. He told detectives they picked Makia specifically because she trusted them enough to go along without asking questions. So they invited her to hang out. They drove her to the woods under that excuse, and once they got there, they did the unimaginable, according to how prosecutors would later characterize it. Wasn't driven by anger or any grudge. It was described as a felt like, carried out simply to see what it felt like, sometimes referred to as a thrill kill. At this point, I don't think it would be out of place to say that these guys were truly possessed. In July 2010, both Southern and Pridgen pleaded guilty to second-degree murder as part of a plea deal. That October, each was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The case came back into court in 2017. That followed a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that found automatic life without parole sentences for juveniles unconstitutional on the basis that young people need a genuine chance at release given how much a person can change over decades.
The I-Team digging into a new effort by one of the city's more notorious convicted murderers, a man once called a thrill killer, to get his life sentence reduced.
He's back in Duval County right now, waiting for a court hearing where he will argue his case himself. Charles Southern was 17 years old when he and 16-year-old Connor Pridgen, their classmates, 17-year-old Makia Coney, back in 2010. The three teens went to University Christian together. Prosecutors said the boys did it because they, quote, wanted to know what it was like. Both Southern and Pridgen were sentenced to life in prison without parole. But because of a new state law passed in response to a U.S. Supreme Court ruling, their sentences were reevaluated. In 2017, Southern had a new day in court where a judge sentenced him to life with a review after 25 years.
A judge reviewed both sentences and ultimately kept life sentences in place for each of them, but added a condition making them eligible for parole review after 25 years. Based on the available information, both men remain incarcerated. Cases like this tend to get remembered for the wrong reasons, for how calculated it was, for what the people responsible said they wanted to feel. That part sticks with people. It's hard not to focus on it. But beyond this, I really hope someone learns from this and understands the limits that should exist when dealing with unknown individuals. Makia should be remembered as a girl who noticed when someone new needed a friendly face, a student with real plans for what came next, a daughter and a sister who trusted the people around her, because up until that point, there'd never been a reason not to. That trust is what made her vulnerable to two people who decided, for reasons that still don't add up to anything reasonable, that her life was something to experiment with. She didn't get the future she was working toward. What's left is the story, and it deserves to be told with her, not just the crime, at the center of it.